He handed me the coat and whispered, "Evelyn, get the kids out of town before midnight." That was the moment my world tilted. I remember the sound of the dry cleaner's ceiling fan, slicing the silence, the faint smell of starch and detergent clinging to the air, and Mr. Harris's trembling hands gripping the beige coat that belonged to my daughter-in-law. Inside that coat was something that would rip my family apart and pull me into one of the darkest family betrayal stories you'll ever hear. At first, I laughed it off. Charlotte winters make people dramatic, I told myself. But when I saw the photo, he slid across the counter. My grandchildren, Ethan and Lily, circled in red ink. The air left my lungs. My heart didn't pound. It froze. Mr. Harris leaned closer, eyes wet. "Don't ask questions," he said. "Just leave. This is not fiction. This is my true story. A story about quiet rooms, secret transfers, and how love can be used as a weapon. A story where sovereign silence became my only armor. Where I learned that sometimes staying quiet saves lives. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, if you've ever felt that chill when something feels off, stay with me. Because what happened next turned my life into a revenge story that shook every truth I thought I knew. I took the coat home that evening, folded neatly over my arm, still warm from the press machine. My house on Sycamore Street glowed softly under the December dusk, the kind of warmth that hides rot beneath. My son Daniel was late again. His wife, Vanessa, was in the living room, smiling, that perfect smile that never reached her eyes. She asked if I'd picked up her coat voice, honey sweet. I nodded and handed it to her. She draped it over the chair beside the fireplace, and I could swear I smelled a stranger's cologne woven into the fabric. That night, as the fire crackled and the kids played on the rug, I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. But the image of those red-circled faces burned behind my eyelids. In that quiet, something inside me shifted the kind of instinct only a grandmother knows. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Family betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers through gestures, through perfectly folded coats and polite smiles. I didn't know it then, but the evidence of everything, the lies, the greed, the plan to destroy what I loved most was already hanging on that chair by the fire. And before that week was over, the name Vanessa Carter would make headlines across North Carolina. Stay with me until the end, because what I uncovered next was more than a secret. It was a nightmare wrapped in silk and perfume. This isn't just my confession, it's a warning. I used to believe betrayal had a sound, maybe the slam of a door, a shouted word, a confession torn from guilt. But what I learned that winter is that real family betrayal is silent. It breathes in the same air as you eats at the same table and smiles while planning your downfall. That evening after the dry cleaning shop, the Carter house glowed with its usual warmth, Christmas lights blinking along the porch, cinnamon rolls cooling on the counter, and my grandkids' laughter echoing through the hallway. To anyone else, it was an ordinary American family preparing for the holidays. But behind that cozy picture was something rotten, something that had been growing quietly under our roof. Vanessa stood in the kitchen, her back turned to me. Her golden hair pinned up perfectly, every movement rehearsed. "You're early," she said, when she heard me come in her tone, polite but tight. "Did Mr. Harris get the stains out?" I nodded. He did. He wanted to make sure it was spotless. I laid the coat across the back of the chair, pretending not to see her glance at it too quickly. There was a flicker of something fear or anger I couldn't tell. Daniel came in a few minutes later, smelling of engine oil and long hours at the workshop. He kissed his wife on the cheek, kissed my forehead, and scooped Lily into his arms. The kids squealed. Vanessa laughed. But it was the kind of laughter that felt too bright, too deliberate. I'd lived long enough to recognize when people performed happiness. That night, I could feel every smile was a script. At dinner, Vanessa poured me a glass of Merlot and filled Daniel's plate before her own. She touched his arm lightly, brushing away imaginary crumbs. Small gestures that said, "Perfect wife" to anyone watching. "We should do a family trip soon," she said suddenly, her tone cheerful. "Somewhere warm, maybe Florida." Daniel grinned. "Sounds good." "Mom, you'd love the ocean." I smiled, though my stomach was in knots. I remembered the transfer receipt Mr. Harris had shown me earlier, $48,000, to a name I didn't recognize, an address in Atlanta, time-stamped less than a week ago. Why would Vanessa be sending that kind of money? Later that night, after everyone went to bed, I walked into the living room. The coat still hung there, half draped over the armchair. The fireplace light flickered against the fabric. And again, that faint scent hit me, a man's cologne, strong and unfamiliar. I reached into the pocket, half afraid of what I'd find. My fingers brushed over folded paper, a printed receipt from a courier service dated 2 days earlier, listing confidential documents enclosed. The destination, Atlanta. I froze. Atlanta. The same city on the money transfer. I heard footsteps behind me and shoved the receipt back into the pocket. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the dim light. "You're up late?" she said softly. I couldn't sleep. She tilted her head, watching me, the way a cat watches a bird. "You worry too much, Evelyn. You always have." She smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. "You know, Daniel and I talk about how lucky we are to have you here. Not everyone gets along with their mother-in-law." I forced a smile. "Lucky indeed." She stepped closer, the faint click of her heels against the hardwood echoing like a countdown. "You've always taken care of everyone," she whispered. "But maybe it's time to let others handle things. You deserve rest." There was nothing overtly threatening in her words, but something in the tone made my heart drop. After she left, I sat there staring at the coat, my hands trembling. I knew what fear felt like. I'd lost my husband, young, raised Daniel alone, worked 3 jobs just to keep the house. But this was different. This wasn't loss. This was poison seeping into trust. The next morning, Daniel left for work early. Vanessa stayed behind, claiming she had errands. I watched from the window as she made a phone call outside, her voice low, her hand covering her mouth. She looked around twice before getting into her car and driving off. Something in me broke. I grabbed my purse and followed her in my old Buick, keeping a 2-car distance. She stopped downtown near a coffee shop and met a tall man in a gray coat, dark hair, heavy build. He leaned in to kiss her. She didn't pull away. It wasn't shock that hit me first. It was confirmation. The kind of cold truth that settles in your bones. I stayed just long enough to see her hand him an envelope, brown thick, the same kind used for courier shipments. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. That evening, Vanessa returned home, radiant, humming like a woman in love. She set her purse down, kissed Daniel hello, and placed a slice of pie in front of me like nothing had happened. "You look tired, Evelyn," she said. "You really should rest more." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and thanked her. That was the first moment I understood the power of sovereign silence, the kind of quiet that doesn't surrender, but calculates. When Daniel went to shower, I walked past their room and noticed Vanessa's laptop open. The screen flickered with an email confirming Friday pickup. Children's medical files attached. I copied the address onto a napkin and folded it into my pocket. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. This was about something far worse. In every revenge story, there's a moment when the victim decides not to be helpless anymore. That night I made mine. I knew I couldn't confront her outright. She was too careful, too composed. I had to be quieter, smarter. I thought about Mr. Harris's warning about the children sleeping down the hall and the man in the gray coat whose name I still didn't know. So I smiled through every breakfast. I hugged her when she came home. I watched as she tucked my grandchildren into bed, pretending to be the perfect mother, while my heart counted every second. Family betrayal doesn't explode. It seeps. It poisons slowly until you either die from it or use it to build your weapon. And I was done pretending. The next few days were a performance worthy of an award. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family, the Carters of Sycamore Street, the kind neighbors point to and say, "They've got it all figured out." But if anyone had listened closely, they would have heard the cracks beneath the laughter, the tremor behind the words. Family betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes wrapped in kindness, sugar-coated lies, and perfectly timed smiles. That Friday evening, Vanessa set the table with the good china, the white porcelain that Daniel's late father had given me on our 25th anniversary. She moved gracefully, humming an old love song, her hands steady, as if nothing in her world was out of place. Daniel came home exhausted, loosened his tie, and kissed her forehead. "You didn't have to do all this," he said, glancing at the table full of roasted chicken mashed potatoes and her signature apple pie. "Oh, I wanted to," she replied softly, eyes glowing under the dining light. "We've been so busy, I just thought we could have a quiet family night. You, me, Mom, and the kids." She called me Mom then, as she often did when Daniel was around. The word used to warm my heart, but that night it made me shiver. Because every time she said it, I could feel the mockery hiding beneath. Ethan ran into the dining room, holding a toy car, his little voice bright. Grandma sat next to me. Lily followed behind him, clutching her stuffed bunny. I smiled, tucking away the dread sitting heavy in my chest. For their sake, I had to pretend. Dinner started with laughter. Lily telling stories from kindergarten, Ethan bragging about his soccer game. Vanessa laughed at every word, even wiped fake tears of joy from her eyes. I watched her carefully, the way her gaze flicked to Daniel whenever I spoke, how her smile tightened when he asked about my day. It was all calculation. When Daniel mentioned a possible business trip to Atlanta, she looked up quickly. "Atlanta," she repeated, tone feigning surprise. "You never mentioned that before." He shrugged. "Just a few clients asking for repairs. Nothing big." "Oh," she said lightly, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her fork. Then just as quickly, she smiled again. "Well, maybe it'll be good for you to get a little break." Under the table, I saw her foot tapping 1, 2, 3 steady, like she was counting seconds. After dessert, Vanessa poured wine for Daniel and myself. "To family," she said, raising her glass. "To love that never fades." I forced a smile and clinked glasses. If love never fades, I thought, then why does yours smell like deceit and perfume that isn't yours? As the night went on, she grew bolder. She told stories about how lucky she was to marry into a family like ours, how grateful she was for me helping with the kids. She even took my hand across the table and squeezed it gently. "You're the mother I never had," she said. The words landed heavy, almost believable. But when her eyes met mine, I saw it a flicker of challenge, a warning. Daniel, ever the optimist, missed it completely. He leaned back in his chair, content his world still intact. "Mom," he said, "isn't she wonderful?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She is," I replied. Sovereign silence. That was the only weapon I had patience sharpened into steel. Later that night, After the dishes were done and the kids tucked in, Vanessa knocked on my door, holding a cup of chamomile tea. "I made this for you," she said softly. "You look tired at dinner." "Thank you," I said, though every instinct told me not to drink it. She placed it on my nightstand, her manicured fingers brushing against the surface with calculated gentleness. "Sleep well," she whispered. "You worry too much about everyone." When she closed the door, I sat in the dark, staring at the steaming cup. The faintest scent of almonds rose from it, subtle, almost hidden. My breath hitched. I didn't touch it. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Pancakes on the stove, music playing, kids laughing. Daniel kissed her cheek, said, "You spoil us." She smiled sweetly and said, "That's what love is." Every gesture was perfect. Every word measured. She even took photos of the kids feeding me strawberries, laughing, and posted them online with the caption, "3 generations of love." I almost choked on the irony. Inside those walls, affection had become performance art. Every hug was camouflage, every smile a decoy. I began keeping mental notes, times, words, looks, building a map of deception. That Sunday, she planned a picnic in the backyard. The weather was warm, about 78 degrees, the sky clear. She spread out a red and white checkered blanket, packed sandwiches, lemonade, and cookies. The kids ran around chasing butterflies, while Vanessa and Daniel lounged under the oak tree. I watched from the porch, pretending to read the newspaper, while in reality, my eyes were fixed on her. Daniel rested his head on her lap, laughing, trusting, blind. She played with his hair, humming while scrolling through her phone with her free hand. I saw her thumb pause typing fast before slipping the device back into her purse. I walked over, forcing a smile. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" She looked up at me radiant. "It is. We're so lucky, aren't we, Mom?" "Yes," I said, voice steady. "Lucky indeed." Her expression faltered for a split second. Maybe she heard the steel in my tone. But then she smiled again. That evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, I walked into the house and saw the coat hanging by the stairs, the same beige coat that had started everything. The kids' laughter echoed down the hallway, Vanessa's voice calling after them, sweet and bright. And I realized this was the calm before the storm. Family betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was unfolding in real time in my kitchen, in my living room, in every "I love you" that wasn't real. I knew then that I had to play along. To survive, I had to perform better than she did. To beat the actress, I had to become the director. So I smiled wider, hugged longer, laughed louder. Every act of affection became my disguise. Because when love becomes a weapon, the only way to fight back is to sharpen your silence. When the nights grew long and the house fell silent, my mind wandered to the years before all of this, before the red circles, the secret money, before my home became a stage for deceit. I would lie awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the hallway clock, remembering the woman I used to be. Back then, I believed in people. I believed in the power of family, in the sanctity of trust, and in the idea that love could fix anything. But family betrayal has a way of killing all of that, not suddenly, but slowly, piece by piece, until even the most sacred memories start to ache. I remembered the first time I met Vanessa. Daniel had brought her over for Sunday dinner. She wore a soft blue dress and carried a bouquet of lilies. Her smile could have lit up the entire neighborhood. She called me Mrs. Carter, then polite and charming, and told me she'd always dreamed of having a mother-in-law she could be close to. She helped me set the table, complimented my cooking, and laughed at Daniel's terrible jokes. It all felt so genuine. I remember thinking, finally, My son has found someone kind. Even after the wedding, I kept believing. When Lily was born, Vanessa let me hold her first. She'll grow up to be strong like you, she'd said, tears in her eyes. When Ethan came 2 years later, I was there again, holding his tiny hand, thinking our family was complete. I built my world around those children, babysitting, baking cookies, rocking them to sleep while their parents were busy. I didn't realize that those hours I spent loving them would one day be the same hours I'd fight to protect them from their own mother. Now, each memory plays in my mind like an old home movie, bright at the edges but haunted in the middle. I can still hear Vanessa's laughter echoing in the kitchen as we baked together the way she called me Mom, like it meant something. I used to smile when she hugged me from behind while we cooked, thinking we'd built something real between us, two women from different generations, bound by love for the same family. But even then, looking back, I can see the clues I ignored. The way she always kept her phone close, the quiet moments where her smile didn't reach her eyes, the time she forgot I was standing in the hallway and snapped at Daniel over something I didn't understand. Guilt crawled through me as I realized how blind I'd been. How many times had I defended her when Daniel complained that she was distant? How often had I said, "She's just tired, sweetheart. You're both working so hard." Maybe I wanted to believe the illusion. Maybe I needed to. Losing faith in family felt like dying while still breathing. Some nights I would sit on the porch watching the streetlights flicker over the quiet Charlotte neighborhood. The trees swayed gently. The air smelled faintly of pine. And for a few moments, it almost felt like peace. Then the fear would crawl back, the reminder that something evil was living under my roof, something I couldn't yet name. I'd whisper to myself, "Don't lose yourself, Evelyn," because I could feel it happening. The lies, the paranoia, the pretending, it all chipped away at me. I found myself double-checking locks, deleting call logs, flinching when my phone rang. I had become a woman, split in two, the loving grandmother everyone saw, and the silent investigator watching from the shadows. Inside, a war raged. One part of me wanted to confront Vanessa, to scream until she broke, to demand she tell me what those red circles meant. The other part of me, the smarter, colder part, knew that would destroy any chance I had to save my grandchildren. Sovereign silence became my armor. I had to act normal, to smile when I wanted to cry, to say goodnight when I wanted to pack the car and run. There were moments when guilt nearly crushed me. I'd watch Daniel sleeping on the couch, one arm draped over Ethan, the faint sound of the TV filling the room, and think, he has no idea the storm that's about to hit him. My son had inherited my softness, loyal to a fault, forgiving to the wrong people. I blame myself for that. Then there were the flashes of anger at Vanessa for betraying us, at myself for letting her. I'd remember every conversation, every favor I'd done for her, every time I'd given her the benefit of the doubt. My hands would tighten into fists until my nails left crescent marks on my palms. "You fooled us all," I'd whisper into the dark. "But you won't win." Still, part of me ached for understanding. I'd lie awake asking myself, why? Why would a mother risk everything, her marriage, her children, for greed, for whatever blood money was tied to those transfers? Did she ever love them at all? Or had she always been planning something darker, seeing her own children as assets to trade? The thought made me sick, but I couldn't let sickness paralyze me. I had to move, to think, to plan. The hardest part was pretending during the day. Vanessa would hug me, her perfume cloying and heavy, and whisper, "You're too good to me, Mom." I'd smile and say, "Always, dear." I started studying her voice, her gestures, her routine. Every morning, coffee at 7:15, every phone call that lasted exactly 9 minutes, every trip to yoga that ended near the interstate. My brain turned into a machine processing clues while my heart fought to stay intact. And through it all, I kept remembering who I used to be, the woman who believed that kindness was enough. I'd lost pieces of her in the chaos, but deep down, I knew she wasn't gone. She was hiding, waiting for her moment to return, stronger, colder, more deliberate. That was the night I made myself a promise. I will not let fear make me small. I had spent my life serving others, loving unconditionally. But love without boundaries becomes weakness, and weakness invites monsters. So I waited silent, but awake. I listened to the rhythm of the lies, to the sound of false affection echoing through my home. And when I closed my eyes, I didn't pray for forgiveness anymore. I prayed for clarity, the kind that burns away illusion and leaves only truth. Because I knew soon, very soon, the performance would end. The actress would drop her mask. And when she did, I'd be ready. The morning after that sleepless night, I woke up with a clarity that scared me. The fear was still there, that low hum under my ribs, but it was now tethered to purpose. If Vanessa thought she could outsmart me, she had underestimated the quiet persistence of a grandmother with nothing left to lose. Every family betrayal begins with blindness, but mine had ended. From that morning forward, I wasn't just Evelyn Carter, the sweet mother-in-law. I became the quiet detective in my own home. I began small, careful. The first step was information finding patterns. Vanessa's schedule was predictable. She claimed to work part-time for a marketing firm downtown, but her hours made no sense. She'd leave at 9 a.m., come back around 2 p.m., then disappear again in the evening, dressed impeccably, always claiming it was a client dinner or a networking event. I started jotting down the times in a small notebook I hid inside my sewing kit. Every minute mattered. If she was hiding something, it was in those gaps between her stories. I also noticed the calls. She had 2 phones, one she left lying around the other, always tucked deep in her purse. That second phone was the real one, the one she thought no one noticed. Once, when she left it, charging in the kitchen while she ran upstairs, I glanced at the screen. There were texts from a contact named CM Initials that would later make my stomach twist. The last message read, "Transfer confirmed. We'll arrange pickup." The timestamp matched the courier receipt I had found in her coat. That was when I decided I needed help. Not from Daniel, not yet. My son loved her too blindly, and I couldn't risk him confronting her without proof. I thought of Mr. Harris, the man who had first warned me. I returned to the dry cleaning shop that afternoon, pretending I had forgotten a receipt. The bell jingled as I entered, and his eyes widened when he saw me. "I was afraid you'd come back," he said softly. "You were right," I whispered. "Something's happening, and I need your help." He nodded and locked the front door. "Whatever you need, Mrs. Carter." He handed me a small paper bag. Inside was a USB drive. "Security footage," he said, "from the day I found that envelope in her coat. I thought you might need it someday. It was proof, my first solid piece of it. But I knew one video wouldn't be enough to convince the police. I needed a story that connected the dots, the transfers, the fake documents, the red circled photos of my grandchildren. So I started building it. Each day while Vanessa was gone, I searched quietly. I learned the rhythm of her lies, how she'd take off her jewelry before leaving for yoga, how she always locked the office in the house when no one was around. That lock became my obsession. One afternoon while she was out, I found the spare key taped beneath the drawer of her vanity table. I waited until I heard Daniel's truck pull out of the driveway, then slipped into the room. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the key click. Inside the office was immaculate, almost too clean. A single desk, a laptop, a stack of folders, and a safe hidden behind a framed photo of her and Daniel. The sight of that photo made me sick. I pulled it down and traced the safe with my fingertips. Electronic lock. I'd seen enough movies to know I wasn't cracking it easily. But I remembered something Daniel once said, that Vanessa used the same password for everything, usually a date. I tried their wedding anniversary. Nothing. Her birthday. Still nothing. Then I thought of that man I saw her meet downtown, the one she'd kissed. The courier receipt had been dated January 28th. Maybe that was their date. I entered 01208. The safe clicked open. Inside, my entire world collapsed. Bundles of cash in different currencies. Fake passports for Vanessa, Ethan, and Lily, but not Daniel. A plane ticket to Mexico, and a folder labeled confidential. When I opened it, I saw more photos of my grandchildren, their school, the backyard, their bedrooms. Every photo had those same red circles drawn around their faces. I remember whispering, "Oh God." I took pictures of everything with my phone, my hands shaking. That was when I heard the garage door open. Daniel was home early. Panic surged through me. I shoved everything back exactly as I'd found it. Closed. The safe rehung the picture and slipped out of the room just as he walked in. "Mom," he called. "In here, sweetheart," I said from the kitchen, forcing calm into my voice. "Just making tea." That night, I could barely sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how to tell my son that the woman he loved was planning to sell their children. I couldn't just drop that kind of truth on him without breaking his heart or putting us all in danger. So I did what I had to do. I planned. The next morning, I called my oldest friend Margaret, who lived in Atlanta. We hadn't spoken in months, but trust doesn't age. "I need a favor," I told her quietly, "and I can't explain everything right now. I just need to know if I can come stay with you." With the kids, there was no hesitation. "Of course," she said. "Whatever's happening, you'll be safe here." That night, I booked a cab for 4 a.m. I packed a single suitcase closed medicine, Lily's favorite doll, Ethan's asthma inhaler, and the USB drive. I didn't take jewelry or money, just what mattered. I also printed the photos from the safe and sealed them in an envelope labeled "For Daniel, if anything happens to me." I left it hidden inside my Bible. But something in me wanted closure. Proof that I wasn't just running on fear. I needed to know who CM was. I checked Vanessa's laptop again. The name popped up in an email draft to Caleb Monroe. The same initials. The man from the coffee shop. The one she had kissed. Everything fell into place. The fake passports. The transfers. The courier deliveries. The client dinners. She wasn't planning a vacation. She was arranging a sale, my grandchildren as her merchandise. By 3:45 a.m., I was fully dressed, waiting by the door. The house was quiet. The cab's headlights washed over the living room wall. I gathered Ethan and Lily, whispering, "We're going on an adventure." Their sleepy eyes blinked up at me, trusting, always trusting. And just as the cab began to pull away, I saw it, Vanessa's car turning the corner, headlights flashing like eyes in the dark. My pulse thundered in my ears. I told the driver, "Go. Don't stop for anything." As we sped down the highway toward Atlanta, I looked back once through the rear window at the shrinking lights of the only home I'd ever known. I wasn't sure if I was running from something or toward something. But I knew this. The investigation wasn't over. It had just begun. The morning sun in Atlanta felt different. Too bright, too sharp, like it could cut through every illusion I'd built to survive. Margaret's house smelled of coffee and safety, yet my nerves refused to calm. For a few hours, I could pretend this was a vacation, that Ethan and Lily were just visiting their auntie. But deep down, I knew peace was a costume, and soon the mask would fall. Daniel's call came just after sunrise. His voice cracked through the line like glass breaking. "Mom, what did you do? Vanessa says you disappeared with the kids? She's called the police?" I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. "Daniel, listen to me. Please. I can't explain everything now. But I have proof of what," he interrupted, the strain in his voice heavy. "Vanessa said you're confused, that you've been forgetting things." That cut deep. The old tactic of the guilty discredit the truth-teller. I had seen it before in my career at the nursing home, where manipulative children gaslit their parents into signing over property. Now it was happening to me. "Daniel," I said, steadying my breath, "if you love me, meet me alone. No Vanessa, no police. I'll show you everything." There was a long silence, then a whisper of surrender. "Where Lenox Square Mall. Food court. 2 o'clock. When I hung up, Margaret's eyes met mine from across the kitchen. She didn't need to ask what I'd done. She just nodded, her quiet strength anchoring me. At 2 p.m., the mall buzzed with life. Mothers shopping teenagers, laughing, the faint smell of cinnamon rolls, mixing with cheap perfume. I sat at a corner table, clutching a cup of cold coffee, my eyes darting toward every entrance. Then I saw him, my son, shoulders slumped, face drawn with sleeplessness. He looked older than he had 2 days ago. He reached me fast. "Where are my children?" "They're safe," I said, keeping my tone calm. "But before I tell you where, you need to see this." I showed him the photos from the safe. The fake passports, the cash bundles, the red circled pictures of Ethan and Lily. I watched his face shift from confusion to disbelief to horror. "This can't be real," he whispered. "It is," I said. "And there's more." I told him about the transfers, the courier shipments, the man in the gray coat. When I said the name, Caleb Monroe, Daniel's head snapped up. "That's her coworker. She said he was helping her with investments. She was helping him traffic your children," I said, my voice breaking for the first time. "Vanessa planned to take them out of the country, to sell them." He stared at me, his face pale, shaking his head. "No, she wouldn't. She's their mother. She's their broker," I whispered. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then slowly, I saw the truth dawn in his eyes, the pattern he'd refused to see. Her absences, her coldness, the late-night calls, the money missing from their joint account. He looked up at me, his jaw trembling. "Where's the safe at home?" I said. "Behind your wedding photo." Within the hour, we were on a cab heading back to Charlotte. The highway stretched endlessly, the tension so thick it could choke. Daniel stared out the window in silence, while I prayed quietly, my hands clenched in my lap. When we arrived, dusk was falling. The Carter house stood still, too still. Daniel unlocked the door with shaking hands. The air inside was heavy, suffocating. Ethan's toys still lay on the floor, Lily's coloring book open on the couch. We went upstairs to the bedroom. The picture frame hung just as I'd left it. Daniel took it down, entered the code 0128, and the safe clicked open. The contents spilled out like poison cash passports and the contract. He flipped through it, his breath catching on a single page that bore his children's names. Ethan Carter. Transfer value, $500,000. Lily Carter, $450,000. He fell to his knees. My God! That's when we heard it, the rumble of a car pulling into the driveway. My stomach dropped. Daniel peeked through the blinds. "It's her," he said hoarsely. And she wasn't alone. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out of the passenger seat. Caleb. Daniel acted fast. He snapped photos of everything in the safe, pocketed a few of the most damning documents, then closed it again. "We're going out the back," he whispered. We slipped through the kitchen door, just as Vanessa and Caleb entered from the front. Through the narrow crack of the doorway, I could hear them arguing. You said the money cleared, she hissed. It did, Caleb growled. But without the kids, the buyer's threatening to pull out. Then find them, she snapped. If I don't deliver in 48 hours, we're both dead. Dead. That word froze me. This wasn't just greed, it was survival in a deadly game. Daniel and I ran, keeping to the shadows until we reached the main road. Once we were a block away, he stopped panting. We go to the police, he said. No, I said. Not yet. We don't know who's involved. She said powerful people. We need someone we can trust. I know a man, Daniel said. Reed, college friend. He's a detective in Atlanta. That night we met Detective Reed at a small diner off I-85. He listened quietly as we laid everything on the table, the photos, the transfers, the recordings from Mr. Harris. When we finished, he leaned back and exhaled. These markings, the red circles, he said, tapping the photos we've seen them before. They're from an international trafficking ring. You weren't wrong, Mrs. Carter. So what do we do now, I asked. We set a trap, he said. But it has to look real. You'll agree to her terms, but we'll be watching. The plan was dangerous, but there was no other way. The next morning, Vanessa called. Her voice was low, calm. Evelyn, I know you have the kids. Let's make this simple. Meet me at the downtown square tomorrow at noon. Bring them and this all goes away. My heart pounded. If I don't, then you'll lose more than them, she said. And you know I don't make empty threats. After the call, Detective Reed finalized the setup. 2 female agents would pose as Ethan and Lily, wearing wigs and identical clothes. I'd meet Vanessa as planned. Undercover units would surround the area, disguised as tourists, vendors, even a man with a dog. By the time the next day came, my nerves felt raw. I sat on a park bench with the children, hands trembling under my coat. Noon struck, and then I saw her. Vanessa walking confidently in her cream suit sunglasses, hiding her eyes, Caleb trailing behind like a shadow. Evelyn, she said sweetly as she approached. So good you came to your senses. It's over, Vanessa, I said, standing up. I know everything. Her lips curved. You don't know who you're dealing with. Caleb stepped forward. Enough talk. Let's go. That's when it happened. Chaos exploding in seconds. FBI don't move. Agents surged from every corner. Caleb bolted, but 2 officers tackled him to the ground. Vanessa froze, her face twisting as the cuffs snapped around her wrists. You betrayed me, she spat, glaring at me. You don't know what you've done. I met her eyes. I know exactly what I've done. I saved my family. And just like that, the illusion shattered. The actress, the perfect wife, the loving mother, all gone. Only the criminal remained. As they led her away, I felt something heavy lift from my chest. Not joy, not relief, something deeper. Justice. But as Detective Reed said later that night, watching the evidence pile up, this isn't the end, Mrs. Carter. It's just the beginning. And he was right. Because in every revenge story, the truth doesn't end. The pain, it only exposes how deep it runs. The weeks that followed the arrest blurred into a haze of headlines, court filings, and sleepless nights. The story of the Carter family betrayal spread faster than I ever imagined. Reporters crowded the Charlotte courthouse steps. Anchors called it a chilling true story of greed, deception, and survival. To them, it was content, a viral family betrayal case with perfect sound bites. But to us, it was raw, bleeding reality. Every time I saw Vanessa's name crawl across the bottom of a TV screen, my stomach turned. I didn't want fame. I wanted peace. We were moved under police protection, first into a quiet town outside Columbia, South Carolina. New names, new school for the kids. Daniel started working remotely for a repair company. And I stayed home, homeschooling Ethan and Lily until it was safe. But safety felt like an illusion, fragile, temporary. The nightmares followed us. Lily would wake up crying, whispering that mommy is watching. Ethan refused to sleep without the lights on. Their innocence, once so pure, was tainted by a story they were too young to understand. Every day, Detective Reed visited or called, updating us about the ongoing investigation. His tone was always serious, heavy. The trafficking ring Vanessa and Caleb were part of wasn't just local, it stretched across states, even borders. Through Reed, we learned that Caleb had flipped under pressure, naming everyone involved. That was how we found out the horrifying truth. Vanessa had been planning this for years. She wasn't coerced. She wasn't desperate. She was ambitious. She saw her children as assets, bargaining chips for debts she owed and wealth she craved. The day I testified against her, I felt my knees shake so violently I thought I might collapse. The courtroom smelled like old wood and perfume. Cameras lined the back, capturing every second. When Vanessa was escorted in, I barely recognized her. Her once perfect hair hung limp. Her face was pale empty. But her eyes still burned with that same cold cunning. The prosecutor asked me to recount everything. The coat, the red circles, the photos the night we ran. I spoke as clearly as I could, though my throat felt raw. At one point, I looked at Daniel sitting behind me, gripping Ethan's photo in his hand. That image gave me strength. When I finished, the room was silent. Even the judge looked shaken. Then it was Vanessa's turn. Her defense attorney tried to paint her as a victim, a woman manipulated by a criminal organization, coerced into impossible choices. But the evidence was too strong. Bank transfers, fake passports, emails, contracts, and Caleb's testimony sealed her fate. She knew exactly what she was doing, he said under oath. She planned the sale herself. She said, "No one will suspect a mother." The room gasped. Daniel buried his face in his hands. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, I didn't cry. I just exhaled for the first time in months. 30 years in prison. No parole for the first 20. Caleb got 20 for cooperation. It should have felt like victory, but justice never erases the scars. It only stops the bleeding. In the months that followed, we built our lives again, one fragile step at a time. Daniel sold the old house, the place that had become haunted by memory. We moved to a farmhouse near Asheville, North Carolina. Small, quiet, surrounded by apple trees. I found peace in tending the garden, the simple rhythm of planting, watering, watching life return where decay once ruled. Ethan started soccer again, laughing in ways I hadn't heard since before the nightmare. Lily began drawing her sketches filled with sunshine, beaches, and birds. Children heal faster than adults, but I knew scars hid under their smiles. Daniel was slower to recover. For a long time, guilt consumed him. "I should have seen it, Mom," he'd say, voice cracking. I lived beside her for years, and I'd tell him the truth, the one I learned the hard way. Evil doesn't always show its face, son. Sometimes it hides behind love. The news eventually quieted. New scandals replaced ours. But sometimes late at night, I'd still get anonymous emails, threats, or cryptic letters. She never forgot one of them said. It was signed only with an initial S. For a while, I feared Vanessa had connections, even behind bars. Detective Reed reassured us every time she's in maximum security. No contact with the outside. Still, the chill never truly left. Then, one morning, 3 years later, a letter came addressed to me. No return name. Inside a single sentence typed on cheap paper. She gets out soon. My hands went numb. I didn't tell Daniel at first. He was finally smiling again. Finally dating a kind woman named Emily, a music teacher who treated Ethan and Lily like her own. I didn't want to break that fragile joy. But secrets, even protective ones, always find their way to the surface. 2 weeks later, Daniel found the letter on my desk. He read it in silence, then said, "We'll protect this family, like you did." And for the first time since that horrible December, I saw strength in his eyes, not the old naive trust, but hard-earned resilience. Still, fate wasn't done with us. A few days later, a box appeared on our doorstep. Inside were two rag dolls that looked eerily like Ethan and Lily, with red circles drawn around their faces. I dropped it, my scream catching in my throat. Daniel called Reed immediately. Within hours, police swarmed the property. It wasn't Vanessa, they later confirmed. It was Caleb's sister, seeking revenge for his arrest. She was caught 2 states away. But the message was clear: evil echoes even after justice. After that, we moved again, this time to the coast of Georgia, into a weathered house near Savannah. The ocean became our therapist. Its rhythm reminded us that life goes on, that pain doesn't end, but it softens, dissolving like footprints in wet sand. Now, years later, I can finally breathe. I watch Ethan, now 12, run along the beach with the family dog, and Lily painting seashells under the porch light. Daniel and Emily laugh inside, planning their wedding. The ghosts haven't disappeared, but they've grown quiet. Sometimes, when I sit by the water, I still think of Vanessa. I wonder if she ever regrets it. The lies, the greed, the betrayal. I doubt it. Some hearts don't break, they calcify. But I've stopped letting her live rent-free in my mind. What matters now is what survived the love that outlasted betrayal, the courage that silence protected, and the unshakable truth that sovereign silence can be louder than vengeance. I keep the wrinkled, dry-cleaning ticket in a small wooden box by my bed. It's a reminder of the day everything ended and everything began. Because sometimes redemption doesn't arrive as forgiveness. It comes as survival, as waking up every day and choosing to live even after hell. And that's my revenge story. Not of anger, but of endurance. Years passed, but the echoes of what happened never truly left us. Pain doesn't vanish. It simply learns to live quietly inside you. For a long time, I thought there could never be peace after something like that. How do you forgive the unforgivable? How do you move forward when the past has burned your home to ash? Yet time, as I came to learn, has a strange way of stitching wounds that reason cannot. What came next wasn't forgiveness. It was something quieter, something deeper, a kind of peace without permission. An indirect reconciliation between the living and the ghosts of what once was. We had been living by the Georgia coast for almost 2 years when the rhythm of life finally began to return. The ocean was a gentle healer. Each morning, the sound of waves brushing against the sand felt like a lullaby for my weary soul. Ethan, now 12, had grown taller, stronger. He ran along the shoreline every morning with Ranger, our dog, while Lily, now 10, painted seashells she later sold at the local market. Daniel had married Emily, the music teacher, who had been our anchor through the storm. She loved those children as if they were her own, not trying to replace Vanessa, but rather to fill the silence she left behind with warmth and melody. I had learned to live with the quiet. But the past has a way of reaching for you when you least expect it. It began one summer afternoon. I was sorting through old boxes, the ones I swore I'd never open again. Inside was the wrinkled, dry-cleaning ticket. The same one Mr. Harris had handed me years ago, the small piece of paper that had changed everything. My hands trembled as I held it. It wasn't guilt that gripped me anymore, but reflection. Every event, every pain, every sleepless night had started with that coat. And somehow that thought didn't just bring sorrow, it brought a strange gratitude. Because without it, my grandchildren might not be alive today. That same week, Detective Reed, who had since retired, called. His voice was older, slower, but still carried the steadiness that had saved us so many times before. "Mrs. Carter, He said, I thought you should know. Vanessa's appeal was denied. She'll serve her full sentence. She won't be out until she's in her 60s. For a long time, I said nothing. My mind felt blank. Then I whispered, thank you. But that night, sleep didn't come easily. I found myself standing by the porch, watching the moonlight shimmer over the water and wondering what kind of woman she was now. Was she bitter broken? Sorry I didn't know, and part of me didn't want to. Yet another part, the part of me that had once loved her like a daughter, hoped she had found some fragment of understanding inside those prison walls. A week later, a letter arrived from a federal facility in Alabama. It was addressed to me, Evelyn Carter. My chest tightened as I turned it over. No return name, but I didn't need one. The handwriting was unmistakable, delicate, perfect Vanessa's. I hesitated for hours before opening it. Inside were 3 sentences written in neat cursive. You were right about everything. I wish I could undo what I've done, but I can't. Tell the children I'm sorry, even if they never forgive me. No signature, no excuses, just that. I sat in silence, tears I didn't expect slipping down my cheeks. For years, I had imagined what I'd say. If she ever reached out, how I'd unleash every ounce of anger I'd buried. But in that moment, anger felt useless. Nothing she said could undo the past, but those few words. They loosened something inside me I didn't know had stayed clenched. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. But I didn't destroy the letter either. I folded it gently and placed it next to the dry cleaning ticket in my wooden box. Symbols of pain, yes, but also of survival, of truth revealed. That fall, Daniel found me on the porch reading. Mom, he said, sitting beside me. The counselor at Lily's school called. She wants to do a project about forgiveness. She said Lily wrote an essay about her mother. I felt my breath hitch. What did she write? Yeah, he handed me the paper. In her small, careful handwriting, Lily had written, forgiveness isn't saying what someone did was okay. It's saying I won't let it hurt me forever. My mom made bad choices, but my grandma made brave ones. Because of her, I still believe in good people. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, tears slipping down as Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. You see, Mom, he said softly, we're healing. Healing, that was the word. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It didn't erase what had been done. It simply existed in small acts. Emily teaching Lily to play piano, Ethan, helping Daniel build a treehouse, me baking cinnamon rolls again without flinching at the sound of the oven door. These quiet moments were our truest revenge. We had taken back the life Vanessa tried to steal. Months later, Emily suggested something bold, a trip to Charlotte. At first, I refused. Too many ghosts, but Daniel insisted gently. Mom, we can't spend our whole lives running from memories. So we went. The city had changed. The old dry cleaner's shop was still there, though the sign had faded even more. Mr. Harris had passed away the year before, but his nephew now ran the place. When I told him who I was, he smiled softly. My uncle talked about you, he said. He said you were the bravest woman he ever met. I stood there, tears burning my eyes, realizing how far we had come. The circle had closed, not neatly, not perfectly, but enough. That evening, back in the hotel, I walked out to the balcony overlooking the city lights. The wind was warm, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic. I whispered into the night, I forgive you, Vanessa. Not because you deserve it, but because I do. It wasn't absolution. It was release. Now when I sit by the ocean, I no longer think about the betrayal as the thing that destroyed us. I think of it as the fire that forged who we became, stronger, wiser, unbreakable. My story isn't about revenge anymore. It's about reclamation, the sovereign silence that chooses peace when chaos fails. And sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, I swear I can hear the laughter of my grandchildren carried across the waves, proof that love once broken can still be rebuilt, not by forgetting, but by surviving. For a long time, I believed that stories like mine ended in rage or revenge. But standing here now, watching the sun sink over the Atlantic and hearing the waves fold into themselves like sighs, I know the truth. Real closure doesn't come from punishment. It comes from peace, from taking back your power quietly, deliberately, until the pain no longer owns you. That's what family betrayal teaches you. It isn't just about the lies others tell. It's about the lies we tell ourselves to keep the illusion alive. I told myself I was powerless. That silence meant defeat. But I was wrong. Silence, when chosen, can be the loudest answer of all. Because sovereign silence is not submission, it's strategy. It's the strength to hold your tongue until the truth has a place to speak for itself. Daniel, Emily, Ethan, and Lily built a new life by the sea. Our house is small, but full of laughter. The kind of laughter that doesn't hide pain, but heals it. Sometimes when I see my grandchildren playing under the golden light, I remember how close I came to losing them, and how by facing the darkness, we all found a different kind of freedom. The past doesn't vanish, but it loses its claws. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever felt powerless, know this: you are not broken. You are awakening. The pain you carry is proof that your heart still works, that you can still choose love after devastation. And that choice to rise without vengeance is the ultimate act of strength. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means reclaiming your story from the hands of the people who tried to rewrite it. I no longer carry Vanessa's name like a curse. I carry it like a reminder of how far we've come, how light always returns after ruin. Maybe that's why I'm telling you this, not for pity, but for purpose. Because someone watching this right now is standing where I once stood, afraid, unsure, trapped in the wreckage of someone else's decisions. To you, I say, you are allowed to start over. You are allowed to choose peace without apology. You are allowed to build again. And if my story moved you, if it made you see even a small part of your own pain reflected here, don't let it fade into the scroll. Leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from, or share this video so it can reach someone who needs hope tonight. And if you want to hear more stories of survival, strength, and quiet redemption, hit subscribe now, because the next story might be the one that changes how you see your own. This was my confession, my healing, my truth, and maybe, just maybe it's yours too.